the intro, come on.
Welcome back everyone to the 91st episode of the Thundercast. As Nick is doing the Hockey Night in Canada and TSN song, we got Nick and Ryan,
What's up, boys?
and it's time. The annual first edition of the Thundercast mock draft. 4 years in the we've done this for 4 straight years. And this year we're gonna do something different. Usually we do our top 10, top 15 each. Instead, Ryan, do you want to tell them what you did?
Yeah, so this year, really exciting prospect class, and we had a lot of guys we wanted to talk about. But we felt that in previous years, too much repetition, where if we had the same player at different spots, we just found ourselves going, yeah, that's what he said. And so what we've done this year is we've each had our list 1 to 16, and we've put a point system. So if you've had a guy first overall, he would get 16 points, and if he was second, you would get 15, all the way down until the 16th ranked player, and he would get 1 point. And what I've done is I've summed up all the points for every player and ranked them from first to last. And so I think we ended up having around 21 or 22 players in this video. If they're tied, they're going to be on the same slide at the same pick. But this is just our way of having a more focused conversation about each prospect when we get there.
All right. So first up, I guess, no shocker here. Unless Montreal gets the first overall pick, then they're gonna take someone retarded. Macklin Celebrini will go first overall, and I mean, he's gonna be like a Jack Hughes. He's probably gonna be like a McDavid. You know what you're gonna get out of him. He in his prime, 100-point guy, Hart candidate, 40 goals, magic hands. What else is there to say about Macklin Celebrini?
Yeah, he's explosive in terms of like what he's done in the USHL, winning Rookie of the Year, winning Player of the Year. I think he did last year, and being the youngest guy in the NCAA this year, he's generational. There hasn't been a player like him that's come along, and he's explosive. I think Jack Hughes is a perfect comparable for him. That's who I compared him to first time I watched him. He's Jack Hughes. He's explosive, drives the net, really good shot, really good playmaking ability, and just a really smart player, both on and off the ice. So yeah, no surprise. He's going to go first overall, I think,
Yeah.
at this point. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a unanimous first overall pick, and what's crazy is he's putting up Adam Fantilli numbers, but he's significantly younger
I think he's
than
8 months
Adam.
younger.
Yeah, basically almost a whole year younger than Adam Fantilli, and he's putting up equal numbers. And obviously, he has to sustain this over the entire season, but that's why this is only the first edition. But I think Nick's right. My player comp is Jack Hughes as well. Super dynamic, super explosive, great shot. If Cole Eiserman didn't exist, he would have the best shot in his class. I don't think anyone would disagree with me on that. And yeah, uh, and the funny thing is the hype around Celebrini leading up to his draft year is so much lower from a first overall pick perspective than any of the previous drafts, and I think he's right up there with the other guys that have gone number one, except obviously Bedard. But he's been incredible.
Yeah, not too much else to add here. Let's go on to number two. Nick and I agree on this one. Not so much Ryan. We'll get to his thoughts
Just
later.
trying to stir some controversy and be different. He's one of those
As
one of
always,
those people.
I did it a couple years ago with Slavkovsky. I had him as my number one guy. That's not turning out to look so
When
great,
did you
but
do that?
what do you mean? Slavkovsky was my number one guy. You don't remember? Oh no, Shane Wright was my number one guy, but I had Slavkovsky number two. But in our mock draft, I put Slavkovsky number one because I thought he'd get taken number one.
You were on the mock draft video last, really? I don't remember that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't remember that.
I don't know.
I had Slavkovsky
I don't
number
remember
one.
that.
I had Slavkovsky number one, and I had Carlson number two last year. And so and to be fair, those were way later in the draft process. So I'm jumping the gun a bit this year. But let me just preface it with saying I think Eiserman is great. He's got the best shot in the class, like I mentioned earlier. Pure goal scorer.
He reminds me. I don't know if this is a good comparison because he's not as built as the player I'm about to mention, But he does remind me a lot of Austin Matthews just because of his shot. And I do think like Eiserman's still really young. He's still 17 years old, so he still has time to grow a few inches. He still has time to build that big frame. And I know he's listed as a left wing. I don't think I'd be shocked if he turns out to be a center in the NHL level. But like you said when we were talking about Celebrini, Eiserman has the best shot in the draft by far. He's probably going to score 50 goals this year in the USHL. Um, and I think if Celebrini didn't exist, he's by far the clear cut number one. Obviously not in your opinion, Ryan. But no, I love Cole Eiserman. I love watching him play. I'm excited to see him at the World Juniors this year. He's committed to Boston University in 25-26. I don't think he's going to play a game for Boston University, let's be honest. And yeah, hell of a player to watch.
Yeah, he's probably going to blow Cole Caulfield's goal scoring record out of the water. I think it's 72 goals or something like that. He's probably going to, yeah, he's going to beat that for sure. I think this is a guy that could be a 20, 30 goal scorer right out of the gate. He's that good of a shooter and a goal scorer. But yeah, like you mentioned, I'm excited to see him at World Junior time because he's going to be pretty good, I think, in that tournament. So, played for Shattuck St. Mary's as well. Was dynamite there. I think he played with Celebrini actually on that team. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah,
Yeah, I think obviously I like him a lot. I think him and the guy I have at number two are a lot closer than perhaps what the other two guys here think. I just think that Iserman, of course, is an elite goal scorer, and I agree that he's probably a guy who, in the immediate short term return, like draft year +1, draft year +2, he's gonna be maybe the second most, or maybe even the most, depending on landing spot, productive player in the draft class. But I think that there are flaws to his game outside of his goal scoring ability. We've seen guys go number two, number three that are hyped up because of their goal scoring prowess, like Line, and again, great goal scorer. But I think from a play driving perspective, I think there is development to be had. I think he's not at the point where he can be trusted a lot defensively, but admittedly, a lot of these high scoring forwards early in the draft aren't necessarily elite two-way guys at this stage in their career. Um, and he's a good skater. I don't think he's an elite skater by any means. And it all comes back to that point of I don't think he's a guy who would play drive on a line. I think he's going to be a very good finisher, one of the best finishers in the NHL, and certainly worth a top three pick. But personally, I always tend to value the guys that have elite play driving. He's the guy who has the puck on his stick that creates opportunities for others. I think Iserman is a guy who you put on a wing and a power play, and he's always a constant threat to score, but he's not necessarily the guy who will dictate pace. But again, great player.
All right, third. You just talked about Cole Eiserman. How about you talk about Ivan Demidov and why you think he will beat out Cole Eiserman for second overall?
I think in terms of puck skills, I think Ivan Demidov is bar none, the most gifted player in this class. I think like Iserman, there are flaws to his game, and he's raw. He's still raw in certain areas, and that's why he's not really in contention. I don't think anyone's in contention with Celebrini because Celebrini is just so polished as a player already at such a young age. But Demidov is a guy. I mean, he's point per game, I think, in the MHL, but he tore it up last year, and
I think he set the record for a U18 player. I think he even beat out Michkov.
yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, he's just an extremely productive player. And he's a guy who, like I mentioned, I value play driving ability. He's a guy who's got excellent puck control, excellent lateral agility, in terms of side to side skating. I don't think his straight line speed is incredible, but his ability to move left or right is incredible. And I'm not saying Connor McDavid is his profile because no one can be McDavid, but what is McDavid's most elite skill? His ability to move from side to side on the ice. McDavid's not the fastest straight line skater either. He's very fast, but not the fastest, right? Demidov has that kind of similar ability with the puck on his hands. He can play center. He's got great vision, great hockey IQ to make high end passes, and he is what I think he has a deceptively nasty wrist shot too. He's got a really great release, and so I think he's a good goal scorer. I think in terms of play driving, he's much better than Eiserman. And he's still a guy who can score 20, 30 goals at his best in the NHL. And personally, for me, that is more valuable. And like I said, Eiserman is great. I think I think those two are definitely the top three for me at this point in time. But love the player. And I think he's gonna pick up steam. His numbers right now don't look great, but you have to keep in mind he's bounced around in a couple of leagues this season. He started in the KHL, and then he got bumped back down to the MHL, and so he's probably still acclimating and getting fit.
Well, the problem is that he's been hurt for most of the year too. He hasn't really played a whole lot of hockey.
Yeah.
So like he's one of the sickest players at his age I've ever seen. But he just hasn't been playing really this year. And this is a very crucial year for development. Last year he was unbelievable. He's also a late 05 birthday. So we'll see how it goes for
he is an 05
once he gets healthy. Yeah. So but yeah, he's a great player. I just have him a little bit lower just because he hasn't been really playing. And there's been players that I've seen that I have higher that I like more than him right now. So
and they're great players, to be fair.
Oh yeah, they're unbelievable. Yeah. And Demidov's unbelievable. I mean, if he turns it around, he could easily be in that top three for me. But right now I have him fifth. But that could change. We'll see.
Like you said, it's the league now relies so much on skill and speed, and that is what Demidov's game is. I do think that, like Ryan mentioned, there's some unraw talent within him. I do think, especially on the defensive side, he can work out some things. But man, if he can break through here in Russia, and I don't, what's his contract status?
2025. So he can come to the league much sooner than Mishkov can.
Yeah. So that would definitely help with his chances in going up and going higher in the draft. And yeah, we'll see how he pans out. I'm intrigued to see where he goes, especially since Ryan has him at 2. So we'll see if you're right or not. Number 4, Sam Dickinson, and I'm giving this to Nick.
Yeah, Nick can just talk this whole segment. We won't say a thing.
There hasn't been a defenseman that's been better than Sam Dickinson in my eyes, and I've watched him a lot. Everything he does is A+. He skates unbelievably well for his size. He doesn't put a foot wrong. He doesn't get beat one-on-one very often. London isn't as good as they were going to be on paper this year, and he's got 20 points, 26 games, and he's a right-hand shot. I think he's like 6'3", something about. Oh, it says it right in front of me, anyways. But for a guy with almost no holes in this game, and he's played like this since he was drafted into the OHL. He plays like a pro already at 17, 18 years old, and as a right-hand shot, you just don't really see that very often. Those types of defensemen are really hard to get in the NHL unless you acquire him at like 30 years old, when he's like already in the decline of his career. I think that's going to make him very valuable. I think teams are going to love that. And like I said, I just haven't seen a defenseman with that impact so far this season in the OHL. Maybe Parekh, maybe like a guy like Muse. If you look around the OHL, you look at a guy like Levshinov. They're both very similar players, and Levshinov plays NCAA hockey. But with Sam Dickinson, I just feel more comfortable having that guy and my team in the future. He's unreal, man. He's unreal. Like I said, haven't seen him put a foot wrong. He's been dynamite every game I've seen him play live. So that's why I have him third. I just think he's a premier defenseman in this draft.
And I mean, that's saying something considering how deep this class is for defensemen. There's a lot of defensemen I really like this year. And he's my number 1 defenseman too. I think it's close between him and Levshinov, but they've both been really productive, and Dickinson is just. I think and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, Nick, but I think he's a guy who could be in the NHL his draft year, like right after his draft year.
100%. Yeah,
he's NHL ready.
Like I said, he plays like a pro already at 17. He was on that Knights team last year that made the final, and he wasn't, one of those players that doesn't play a lot of minutes. He was an important part of that team, Didn't put up. I think he's already matched his point totals from last year. But like in terms of like how important he was to that team, how integral he was to that back end, he wasn't any slouch, man. At 16, he was one of the key players for that team. So And now he's stepping in this year, more maturity, a little bit of experience under his belt, and he's thriving right now with the Knights. So I'm really excited to see where he goes in his NHL career. I'm really excited to see what he can do for the rest of the year because I love him, man. He's awesome. He's an awesome player.
Until the Flyers draft him, and then Nick is in a tough spot.
And then it's like, oh, man. Whatever.
Would you say a good comparable for Dickinson would be someone like a Quinn Hughes?
I've seen a lot of Pietrangelo being thrown around, and I think that's a good comparable for him, especially in his like more prime days. Like I said, bigger body, good two-way guy. Apart from that, I haven't really thought about it. I think Pietrangelo is a pretty good comparable, to be honest with you.
High-end offensive player.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if the Flyers take him, at least he's with Oliver Bonk.
That's true. Keep that OHL, that London Knights connection.
And Berkey.
Yeah. And Denver Berkley, yeah.
Bonk and Berkey have both been unreal too for this team.
Barkey might make the World Junior team for Canada.
He could. He might. Yeah, that's a good point.
Him and Cowan have been incredible on the penalty kill.
They've been unreal. It's the rest of the team that's kind of been letting them down a little bit. The depth isn't as good. We have a couple guys that are out as well.
Haltonen's pretty good.
Haltonen's been unreal too. Yeah. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with the Knights in the future. But it hasn't really been a very good run as of late. So hopefully it improves.
Yeah, for sure. And number 5.
Artem Levnushkinov. I suck at pronouncing names, and I don't care. But no, this guy is a big, mean, nasty right shot D who skates well, which I'm gonna say a lot throughout the video is what teams are looking for nowadays. You want that big right hand D that can produce offensively, and that's kind of what you need now to win a Stanley Cup. Like with every young defenseman, there are some deficiencies in his game, but he's having a great year with Michigan State. 15 points in 16 games at a young age like him. That's really fucking good. And like Nick and Ryan have mentioned, this draft, man, is so deep for defensemen that is there a chance that he can pass Sam Dickinson as the number 1 defenseman? I could see
probably
it.
Just because of the competition he plays against. I think like the main culprit here.
Yeah. But no, like he's like I say, he's physical. He's offensively gifted, very high hockey IQ, smooth skater. If he's not NHL ready, he'll be ready within
pretty close
the next year. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for his weight, he's big, NHL ready body. He's a great skater. Got 4-way mobility. He's got good length. Right, he's one of the best penalty killers last year in the USHL. He's got good hands. Right, really good hockey IQ. He's right-handed shot. He's got a lot of upside offensively. I don't think he's even nearly as polished as he could be offensively. He's got a really good shot, really hard, really accurate. Can get them through traffic. Can get it in from range. He does have kind of that Zadorov tendency where he likes to go for the big hit. And so I think that's something that could be improved, his spatial awareness defensively. But outside of that, I think just his skill at his size, his physicality, his production in college, he's definitely my number 2 defenseman. And I think I love Dickinson, but I think those two are fairly close for me.
I think with Levshinov, when you watch him play, I think like the main word to have for him in the offensive zone, and maybe defensive zone as well, is unpredictable, right? Like when you watch him play on the power play for Michigan State, and you watch him play 5-on-5, he does a lot of these head fakes and a lot of these like little movements that really throws defenders off, and he throws that first pass, and they're really good first passes. So a guy that can quarterback the power play, can be the leader of the PK, and you mentioned it, just an all-around beast of a defenseman there. So, and playing really well for Michigan State this year. So, he's going to be one to watch. I agree. Him and Dickinson, I'd say, are. I think Dickinson's the best defenseman right now, but I think they're going to be neck and neck by the time it's all said and done. They're both pretty similar in terms of their offensive output and they're just their overall two-way game. But
this draft class has a lot of defensemen who I think from like a physical perspective are NHL ready, right?
There's a lot of big defensemen. There's a lot of like smaller mobile defensemen as well. It's a crazy year for defensemen this year.
All right, next up, Cornelius. Once again, butchered that. Very badly.
Hellenius.
Okay. Who wants to talk about him? Nick, you have him 4th.
Sure.
Why?
Well, he's producing in the men's league that
Mhm.
isn't really seen too far often. Guys like Barkov, who went second overall in his draft year, guys like Line, who went second overall in his draft year, are producing at around the same pace. Now, you can type anything about Patrick Line you want, but um, Hellenius, like I said, he's scoring at a crazy pace right now. I'm pretty sure he's a true eligible as well. I'm pretty sure he's 18,
Mhm.
17, 18. So players like that don't always come around that often. Kind of the same idea as Dickinson. Um, when you have a player that is in a men's league that scores that high, the first thing you're going to throw at him is NHL ready. This guy's NHL ready. He can already
Yeah.
score at a high pace. Look at a guy like Leo Carlson last year, also went second overall, scoring at a 4 per game pace in the SHL, arguably better than the Finnish Elite League, right? So um, he's a guy that jumps the pucks really quickly. He's got a really good shot, really creative in the offensive zone. And in a league with former NHLers and very experienced Finnish league players, it's nothing to scoff at. He is the real deal offensively.
Yeah, I mean his work rate too for a guy with his skill and his creativity, he's got an incredible work rate on the puck in the offensive end as a forechecker. He's a workhorse. He works really hard in the corners. So he's not just a finesse player, which is something that I think a lot of Finnish players and European players in general get unfair stick for. You hear it a lot of the times, especially with some of the older heads in hockey. Don Cherry comes to mind. It's
Yeah,
like, the European soft. He's very young, true eligible, and he's strong on the puck. And I think, especially for his size in the men's league, I think he's still young enough that he's gonna get some mass, maybe grow an inch or two. I'd be hesitant to play him in the NHL right away, because I still think that there's a jump from Liga to the top league in the world, especially since I think we want him to build some mass and some more strength before we put him up against NHLers, which is why I have him slightly lower than Nick. But hey, six is really good in a draft class like this.
he could play AHL if they sign him as well.
Yeah, that's fair. So really great player. Nick covered up pretty much all the points.
Um, my prediction, and it's gonna, if I'm right, I'm just saying, I'm calling it. I feel like it's gonna be like Christian Vesalainen. I just have a weird feeling that, like, it happens every year where an overseas player gets so hyped up, and as soon as they step a foot in North America, they just can't adjust. And I feel like that's gonna happen here. I have nothing to back my argument. I'm going off. I'm going off pure vibes here, but I don't know. I just have a weird feeling. We've seen it with Vesalainen. We've seen it with Pugliarvi. I don't know. I'm just saying, some Finns just can't handle the North American game.
That's fair. I mean, Finland this year at the World Juniors too is not fielding a particularly strong team. I think he's gonna make Team Finland. He's gonna play a big role, and
Oh
so
yeah.
I'm excited to see what he can do, especially with a team that is probably not as good as it has been in previous years.
All right. Next up, Berkley Catton. One of my favorite guys to actually watch. Um, you watch him play, and he's just a shifty playmaker. Very very smart in the offensive zone. I don't know if he's gonna be a goal scorer in the NHL level. I don't really see him as a guy that's gonna put up 30 goals a year consistently. But I do think this is a guy who's gonna be a first line center, get provide 60 assists a year, probably around 20 goals, 25 goals, 80 points a year, and that's what he is. He's just a hard-working, speedy, skilled guy, and that's a pretty good pick. That's a pretty good to get it at seventh overall. Um, there's some things he can work on, like most young kids in this draft, but he's really skilled. He's a really skilled player.
Oh, for sure. Berkeley Catton is just Nick mentioned this a couple of days ago. He's just always been quality. Just a really good, productive player. He's got great skating. Man, his skating is really good. Really got great quickness. He has good hands, good vision. And I think I agree with Shay. I think he's definitely more of a pass first kind of guy than a guy who's gonna actively always look for himself to score. He's elusive. He's really good in like those small spaces of creating space for himself. And at his age, he's got some good defensive awareness in a sense. Like he cues in on a lot of coverages, and his role kind of in that defense. But he plays a bit small to me. That was kind of the critique I had for Mitch Marner in his draft year too. I think he's not that small. He's 5'11", 163. Like that's not small, but sometimes when I see him on the ice, he looks smaller than 5'11" to me. I don't know if that makes sense. And I think that might be it wasn't a concern for Marner, but I think that might be a reason why he went from probably a consensus top 4 pick before this draft process to still being very good, but just a bit lower.
All right. No opinions, Nick?
I mean, I think he touched on everything there. This is an offensively creative player, able to find space really easily. He doesn't need much space to really work. And like I said, he's just been good in the WHL ever since he stepped foot in it. He was a first overall pick in the draft. Um, he reminds me a little bit of Clayton Keller in a sense that he has that like same sort of first pass, that vision, that 4-way mobility that he has as well. Defensively, he's no slouch either. So I think he's a safe pick. I think he's one of the safer guys to take in this draft. He'll be an NHL player. I'll be surprised if he's not.
For sure.
All right, number 8, Cayden Lindstrom. Uh, I absolutely love Cayden Lindstrom watching him play. Um, he's a he's a tank man. He's 6'5", 205. Just a great skater for his size and his age. A lot like Quinton Byfield, actually. A lot like Quinton Byfield. I think he's going to be a great power forward in the NHL one day. I think it'll take a while for him to adjust to the NHL level, just like how long Quinton Byfield's taking, but also kind of like how Tage Thompson. It took a while for Tage Thompson to, find his footing in the NHL and really build out his frame. But once he did, look at him now, man. He's a tank, and those are my two comparables for a guy like Cayden Lindstrom. Right now for Medicine Hat, 38 points in 27 games, has 22 goals. I got a shout out here, Delta Hockey Academy, the city I grew up in my childhood. Love to see that, and no, I'm cheering for Cayden Lindstrom, man. I really hope he becomes the best player in this draft class.
I mean, yeah. He's I struggled with Lindstrom. I kind of juggled him kind of between I think 7 and where I ended up settling with him. Um, very raw. Nick and I were discussing this. He's a very, very raw player still. And he's got the physical measurables. At 6'5", 205, pretty great skating for his size. But there's also a part of me that's a little bit hesitant that his offensive upside at the NHL level is not nearly as high as what it appears he's been producing this season for Medicine Hat. I think there is a possibility that he settles into more of a pure Luc Dubois kind of mold where very good player, not super dynamic offensively, and he's just a solid middle six forward. And kind of like how Dubois is kind of playing third line minutes right now for LA. To be fair, that's also just LA wanting to have 3 good lines. But I think Lindstrom is a guy who definitely has the upside to be a guy like Tage Thompson, like you mentioned, but on the lower end could be a guy who's just a good middle 6 guy. And so that's why I have him lower. But obviously, if you're drafting him for what he could be, right? And he's still a very raw, but he's a really good productive player this year.
Yeah, he's a guy who can definitely jump up. I mean, 20 goals, 26 games. You see the stats there. You see his size. Skating is really, really good for his size as well. I think I think Shay touched on it really well. It was like you see guys like Byfield and Tage Thompson that develop a little bit slowly at his size, but when they do peak, it's more like a high risk, high reward almost. I think the difference with Quinton Byfield is that kind of the same thing as Catton. He's always been very highly touted. He's always scored at a very high rate. I don't think Lindstrom's going to score as high as either of them, and he's still very raw. But all around, he's a really complete player. He's got kind of a little bit of everything. I think teams can value that. I think if there's going to be a player that jumps up higher and maybe goes off the board, it's going to be this guy for sure.
I agree. All right, 9, Carter Yakimchuk. Who wants to talk about Carter?
I have him the highest. I can.
All right.
I can lead the way.
Go for it.
I think. I mean, you see the stats. He's already got 12 goals in 25 games. Power play specialist. But I think in all 3 zones, he's really mobile. That's the wrong guy. Anyway.
My fault.
Damn it! You've already spoiled the 10th pick. In all 3 zones, he's a very calm defenseman, almost like an Oliver Bonk type. His transition game is really good as well. And he doesn't really back down either. He's just a very calm, composed player. All 3 zones, like I mentioned, he's just really complete in that sense. And I feel like in terms of the next group of defensemen after Levchinov and Dickinson, I think Yakimchuk's right on the top in terms of the we'll call it the B group of defensemen. You have those like mobile defensemen that are coming in, and then you have him as a complete 2-way defenseman there. I think his development curve might be a little longer than some of these players, but I think his ceiling is very, very high. I think teams are going to value that quite a bit. And see, we have Montreal there at number 9. Hey, that's a perfect spot for him. I can definitely see them taking a guy like Yakimchuk to kind of partner with Ryan Backer for the future. 2 really strong mobile defensemen. So yeah, that's really my thoughts on him. I haven't seen him play a ton, but I mean, you look at the amount of points he's producing, the amount of goals he's producing. The last guy I can think of is like Nick Hague in the OHL. He scored like 30 goals one year as a defenseman, which is crazy. But apart from that, he's really good. He's a good 2-way guy. He's a very safe pick in my eyes, and I'm comfortable enough right now to have him in top 10. I think he's good.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I think of Carter Yakimchuk, I think he's got 2 NHL ready skill sets, and that's his size and his shot. Right? He's got a really good shot, really good size. I think he's, as Nick mentioned, very offensive minded, but he does show kind of more responsible decision making, which is something that I kind of lambasted a guy like Pavel Mintyukov for. I think Yakimchuk's decision making is much better, and Mintyukov is looking really good for Anaheim. So Yakimchuk is definitely a guy who could see the NHL in 2 to 3 years, depending on his development. But he's got some really great mobility too at his size, and that's something that we're noticing, especially early on with Dickinson, Levchinov, and now Yakimchuk, is these big guys who have great mobility at their size and NHL ready bodies. So very excited to see him the rest of the year.
Okay, next up, the one he spoiled.
My fault, boys.
I guess. Talk about silly. Fuck me.
Silly, yeah. I guess I'll cover him. I'll cover him really quickly because I have him the highest out of all of us. I think the one thing that sticks out is obviously the guy 6'7", 207. But like we've mentioned before, I think he's not. He doesn't look particularly aesthetic when he's skating, but he gets to the spots very well. And I think his long reach and his kind of explosiveness in straight lines allow him to make up for less than ideal 4-way skating. And so he can still close down gaps because of his reach and his explosiveness. I think he's got a very good first pass on breakout, and he's got above average passing and vision. It's not the calling card of his game, but he's definitely still a project, and he's not someone I project to be overly productive in the NHL from an offensive perspective. But I think he's very responsible with the puck. He's 6'7", and you put him in the lab with a skating coach, and I think he's gonna be a really, really good player. And I say I don't think he's gonna be super productive. I mean, 10 points in 36 games in the KHL is not bad, even if there are questions about how competitive the KHL is nowadays compared to what it was a couple of years ago. But I just like him a lot. Really projectable traits. And I think he's going to be an NHLer for a long time.
Okay. I have no other thoughts to be honest. I just saw his size and I'm like, yeah, GMs are gonna love that.
Yeah, I think I'll say what Shay said about Hellenius is that there's always kind of that guy that just can't really transition in the NHL. If there's any player that's a high risk, high reward, it's this guy in this draft. I mean, I first heard about it when Bob McKenzie had him in his I think he had him like sixth or seventh or something like that. He had like 5 points in his first 5 games. I will say this about Silyev is that I don't I can't recall a defenseman at his age that has played as many minutes that he has in the KHL, and that's a
Yeah.
very tough league. It's why they're got it as the best league outside of the NHL, even if it isn't competitive as much as it was or whatever it is. It's still a damn good league.
Yeah.
And at 6'7", I mean, we'll see with him. He just kind of popped out of nowhere this year. I feel like so.
Yeah.
There's gonna have to be a lot of scouting involved, but I'm sure one team will like him. Maybe we'll go off the board. We'll see. I mean, that 6'7" is gonna be I think the factor here. Maybe Arizona
Montreal is definitely taking him.
Maybe Arizona will take him. They like those big Russians. I mean,
that's fair.
It's working with Simishev, so.
Yeah.
And Daniel Boo's been pretty good as well.
He's pretty good as well, yeah. Not bad.
I don't know, man. Boo at what 12 or 11, whatever it was. That's still a bit. I don't know.
He's been producing in the KHL this year. He's playing for Locomotive. So
he's been okay. He's been okay. That thing was off the board.
Next up, it's the younger Yerchek brother, Adam Yerchek. And from what I've read, because I haven't watched footage of Adam Yerchek, it seems like he's one of the more raw defensemen in the league, or in this draft, sorry. I know he has good skating, and he is a pretty good puck-moving defenseman, but I feel like this is a case where it's a team with pick 11, 12, or 13, and they're like, okay, do we take a chance on this guy? And if he can break out, I think he'll be a great defenseman. But, I'm going to go with a similar player here in Phil Broberg. What Broberg was touted for entering the draft was his amazing skating. But there was questions about his hockey IQ, and like Yerchek, he was a raw prospect, and no one knew what he would become. I'm getting similar vibes here with Adam Yerchek. Like I said, he's a great skater. Everything else, we don't know yet, and I think a team will take a risk, take a bet on him, but he probably shouldn't even be in the top 16 though. I'm not gonna lie, but I do think a team takes a chance on him.
Yeah, I mean, he's just in here because his brother is playing pretty well for Columbus right now and was a guy that was very highly touted, and he's a great skater. And so really putting him at 14th is a lot of projection of what I think he could be when the rest of his game rounds out. But he is pretty small for his size. He got lit up by a suicide pass a couple of days ago, and it did not look good. And so this is not a guy that you can stick in the NHL in the next 4 years, probably. I think.
But also, what are you doing as a 30-year-old hitting a teenager like that, bro? Like, have some courtesy. I know it's hockey, it's a rough game, but
it was rough. That was a tough hit he took.
Oh my god, yeah, that was bad.
He's a guy who's got put on a lot of mass. I think his hockey IQ is going to need some growth. But his skating, his puck retrievals, I think are positives. But he's just a guy that I think if he works everything out, he puts on some mass, that he's going to be one of the better defensemen in this deep class. He has all the tools, is I guess what I'm trying to say. He just has to put it together, as Shay mentioned.
Yeah, he's extremely raw. If he goes in the first round, it's going to take some time for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at his numbers. He hasn't produced particularly well when you look at. I also don't know how much he's playing. So some of those men's league teams sometimes just don't play their young guys in the men's league. It's like why bring him up in the first place? But he plays kind of similar to his brother. And we obviously know how good David Yerchek is. But I think with Adam, he's a lot more raw, and he probably got brought up in the men's league a little too early. In my eyes, he should probably be playing junior hockey right now to kind of, I think that'll help his development a little bit better. But we'll have to wait and see with him. I don't have him ranked at all, just because honestly, I don't have the greatest read on him either. He's just a very up and down player for me. But Yeah, that's basically all I have to say about Adam.
For sure.
Luke. Not Luke. I'm an idiot. Liam Greenstreet. Nick
You didn't get
has.
one name right.
No, I don't think I'm gonna be able to. Nick, you have a 9. How come?
Well, I think he leads draft eligibles in the OHL, possibly CHL in scoring right now. And on a Windsor Spitfires team, that is bad. They are bad, man. They let in so many goals. But Greentree's one of the brighter spots. He's producing on a team that's not well. You have him at San Jose. They're not a very good team. I mean, who knows with them?
Hey, they
But
beat Edmonton.
that's true. Yeah, I guess you're right. Thank God they didn't beat my Penguins. Jesus Christ. But anyways, he's a player that produces really well. He's a really smart player, really quick on his feet. I think teams are going to value that quite a bit. But yeah, just his overall production for how bad the Windsor Spitfires are. And I'm just saying that because I'm a Knights fan. They're actually terrible. They're not good at all. But yeah, I think he'll be a really good one of those better offensive players stepping in the league. You see those players that are just kind of like a Dadonov, where he's just like sneaky good and just somehow puts up points, like when he was in his prime and stuff. I think Greentree could be kind of the same type of player. Really good finisher, really good playmaker, great in the power play. And I think as Windsor sells off assets because they're so terrible, Greentree will just step up, get more ice time, and perhaps produce more. So he's got good size too. He's almost 200 pounds, 6'2". Yeah, I just think he's one of those scorers that kind of pops up. I don't want to say randomly. He was really good last year with Windsor, so I think he put up like 20 something goals. But in terms of production, I mean, you need goals to win games, and Greentree will bring you that. So
Yeah, I mean he's just been producing on a really bad team, and he doesn't have a ton to work with, and he's making it work. And I think, NHL projectable size, right? That's always a thing. And so, I'm always a bit wary on guys who have kind of breakout seasons their draft year. And so that's why I don't have him necessarily as high. I think he's one of the more middling players in the sense of I don't project a whole lot of room for growth. But he's a very safe pick. I think he's going to be a productive NHLer for a long time. And so definitely end of the lottery, mid first round for me. But very good player. Very productive, and he's definitely jumped up my board. Before this season, let me tell you, he was nowhere near the
he
top
was
30.
in my top 20, I think, at the start of the year. So I don't know. I don't about him, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, to be fair, you always had a better read on the OHL guys than I do.
Yeah, I guess
outside of Kitchener, the Kitchener's like my one team.
He's also wearing the Legends number there, Josh Hosang, Windsor Spitfire legend there.
All right. Next, this is a bit off. We have 3 players.
Oh dear.
In pick 13. So, we'll start with Ryan's pick, then we can go to mine, and we can go to Nick's. So, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, Zeev Buim, we talked about Lindstrom and his productivity in the NCAA. I mean, Zeev Buim, I mean, the stats speak for themselves. 15 games, 4 goals, 15 assists, more than point per game. In college, he's been super productive. His size is, he's not like Lindstrom or these other guys that are like 6'2", 200. But that's also why I don't have him in the top 5, right? But I think he's a guy who's got very good skating, very good offensive instincts, and he's 5'11", but he plays a little bit bigger than that, and he's been very productive for Denver this year. And I think this is a guy who's gonna jump up a lot of draft boards over the next couple of months as we head into draft season, especially if he keeps playing like this.
All right, I got TJ Ginla. I mean, I really want TJ Ginla on the Oilers, all right? Listen, I need to piss off the Flame fans. All right, you know what? Jerome should have been an Oiler in the first place, all right? He's from fucking Edmonton, all right? You know what?
It's not really how that works, Shay.
That's how it should work. That's how it should work.
No.
Anyways, TJ, I mean, a lethal goal scorer. He has 20 goals in 27 games for the Kelowna Rockets. And I honestly do think, just because of his last name is Ginla, he might go higher than some people expect. Ryan has him at 30. I think that's a bit too low, considering his productive season, the season he's had so far. I honestly think he's a year away from being NHL ready. I think he'll need one more extra year of seasoning with Kelowna. But I think this is a guy that could probably adjust to the NHL level pretty well. Great offensive instincts. Whatever team gets him, I think they're gonna get a damn good player here.
I mean, 20 goals in 27 games isn't bad either. And Kelowna's not a very good team either, I don't think, from what I remember. So one of those bright spots in that teams that can produce. It's always nice to kind of have.
Yeah.
For me, I have Zine Parekh at 10th in my rankings. I think when you look, I think before the season, it was kind of tough to get a read on Parekh to see what he was all about. Most goals by a 16-year-old defenseman in the league's history is very notable. And obviously, he's producing at a very high rate. He's going to be playing Memorial Cup with Saginaw this year. They host it this year, playing on a very loaded team now. They picked up some names already in the OHL, guys like Hunter Height, guys like he's from Windsor. I can never pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to try. But he's playing with guys like Michael Misa and Sapovalev and guys that have already been drafted. And he's their top defenseman. Very dynamic in the offensive zone, power play specialist, moves around extremely well. And yeah, you're looking for like a smaller puck moving defenseman. I say smaller. He's already 6 foot. He's definitely grown a lot since he was drafted. He was just a little guy when he just came into the league. So, but in terms of the puck moving defenseman, he's my favorite one in this draft. I think he's just how mobile and how offensively creative he can be, and he's going to produce a lot. I think moving forward from the playoffs and the Memorial Cup and down the stretch this year. So he's a player that can go as high as 10th, and he's a player that can probably go as low as 20th.
Yeah, I mean, he's my Kevin Korchinski.
Yeah, exactly.
He's my Kevin Korchinski.
And look at what Korchinski's doing for the Blackhawks now. He's been really good for them lately. So
yeah, for sure. Moving on to 14. This is my guy.
Vaseline.
Nick knows this. Jay knows this. Vaisinen, this is my boy. All right, great two-way skater, very good instincts, incredible hockey IQ. I think that's something that a lot of teams value. For example, that's something that Toronto values a lot. I know from their draft strategy, they love high IQ guys who can read the ice well, who can make reads both offensively and defensively. I think he's got an underrated first pass. He's holding his own in a men's league in Liga with Cuckoo. I think he's got a lot of untapped offensive upside, and I can see him having a Topi Niemela type D+1 year where the offense just comes together and he explodes. I'm hoping, I don't know if he's gonna make the finish team, but I think he probably will. I think he's played more than Kiwi Haryu has this year, for example. And so I think he's a guy that will have minutes. I think a lot of people will be able to see him at the World Juniors. He's not going to blow you away, but he's one of these guys that, like I had with Topi Niemela and Kallio Delius in previous years, I just really love their hockey sense and how responsible they are with the puck. And the fact that he can play in a men's league is a bonus for me. So, every draft year I have one of these guys, and this year it's him.
Okay, I don't know what else to add. I don't know much.
Yeah, pretty much. I've known about him. He pretty much nailed everything there. So.
Next, this is one of my favorite guys. Keep an eye on him because I do think that he could potentially end up higher on the draft board when we do this in a few months again. Nikita Artemonov, the first name I probably pronounced right this entire video, besides Macklin Celebrini and Cole Eiserman. Artemonov is just a skilled player, man. He's wickedly skilled. He's not a very physical player, but very very hard on the forecheck. Kind of like Puyarvi, where Puyarvi's not a physical guy at all, but he's a dang good forechecker. That's kind of like the similar type of game Artemonov brings. Great passer, a great shot, very fast player as well, playing in the KHL. I feel like he reminds me a bit of Danilo Yurov, and honestly, I don't know how Yurov felt to pick 21 or whatever back a few years ago. That still kind of shocks me, but no, keep an eye out on Artemonov. I feel like he's going to go way higher than he should. 14 points in 27 games for Torpedo. Can't say those other two names. I'm not even gonna try. um, but no, watch out for this guy. This guy's freaking awesome.
No, definitely like him a lot. He's a guy that I was really struggling with on whether or not I should put him in the 15 or 16 spot. You can see I had him 17th. It's just, the stats look great. I just haven't really admittedly watched him much. Usually when I watch their games, I'm focused on the big 6'7" dude on the back end. So I have really no clue on how he's playing. But his numbers look great in the men's league. So, and the second best league in the world. So he's got that going for him.
All right, 16, Michael Hage. Um, Ryan has him 29th. Why do you have him 29th, Ryan?
Why I'm 29th? He's playing in the USHL and he's putting up good numbers. Nothing really screams super, and there's nothing about him that screams special to me.
I
There's
think he's like a safe pick to me. He
Yeah,
seems like a
right.
very safe pick.
Exactly, and so as and kind of like and admittedly, VT Vicenen is a guy who's I also view as a safe pick. I just think Vicenen has an offensive upside, and that's what kind of projects him higher than a guy like Hage for me because I think you can find other Michael Hages in a draft class like this. He's still very good, and honestly, in this draft class, anyone from 20 to 35 or 40 could go interchangeably. To be honest. He's a really good player. So I don't want my 29th ranking to seem like I don't like him. I just think he's a very safe, solid player.
Yeah, just
I
a
think
very
Hag was a player that was injured for the most part of last year, if not
yeah.
all of last year. So I think he's just kind of scraping the surface. Once he kind of warms up, even he's playing for the Chicago Steel, which is like the best team in the USHL for developing
True.
prospects.
Noah Moldenhauer, baby.
Yeah. But like I said, once he gets warmed up, I think eventually you'll see him start to score more and get a little more comfortable.
I definitely think he's one of the stronger two-way players in this draft. I think his defensive game is really, really good. Um, but yeah, he's coming back from injury. It's gonna take him some time to get back up to speed. But like we said, he's a safe pick. He can probably go anywhere from like 15 to like 40, if like Ryan said. Like this draft is it's so deep.
Stacked.
It's just hard to predict where everyone's gonna go.
He's a great player. He got drafted by Kitchener. He didn't go there though.
Hey, maybe I'd like him more if he went to Kitchener.
Yeah,
That's all I'm gonna say.
I mean, Kitchener's doing pretty damn well right now, so I mean they should be fine without him.
All right, 17. We got 3 players here.
Let's start with Nygaard. You can go take the Nygaard.
Yeah, I mean Nygaard's playing in the Sweden second league. He's not getting much ice time, which again, don't know why you're gonna bring guys into a men's league if you're not gonna play them, as Nick mentioned. But he's got an NHL sized body, he's got traits, and everyone seems to be projecting this guy in the 12, in like in 8 to 13 range. I just put him in here because of the name value. I haven't watched him much, so I'm sure he's gonna be a good middle 6 guy probably. And it'll be interesting to see him at the World Championships because he's not gonna have a very good team around him. So really the judge is gonna be how he dictates play at the tournament.
His name sounds like a brand of eggs from like the grocery store.
Aaron Kiviharu. I think we can all talk about Kiviharu because we're all familiar with Kiviharu. To me, this is the Aturatu of the draft.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of injury issues for Kiviharu, not having the best draft year season so far. I think if you're in the late first round, early second round, that's where I think that's a good pick right there. But it's really risky within the top 15. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up like Timothy Liljegren. Remember, Timothy Liljegren was supposed to be like a top 3 pick in 2017.
Oh, he was unreal.
And then he got mono, yeah.
Yeah, so like it reminds me of that situation. I still think Kiviharu would be a very, very good top 4 defenseman when he enters the NHL. He's not. I don't know about elite like he was supposed to be a few years ago. Like he was supposed to be the first overall pick. No.
Oh yeah. He was overhyped. Yeah.
That was overhyped though. To be fair.
But no, just I have no idea where he goes, and this is the wild card of the draft.
Yeah, he's the most polarizing player, I think. I mean, in terms of his talent and his skill level, he's up there with Demidov in this draft in terms of like on
Yeah.
defense, in terms of having that skill set. Um, the 7 games he's played, I watched a couple of his games, and kind of the same thing I said about Levchinov. He's got those little head fakes, those little moves that he does to kind of throw defenders off. He's really good at that. He's really good at his four-way mobility is very good. Like, he's 5'9", 165 pounds as well. He's not very physically filled out at all. But I mean, like you said, he could be like he's basically the Atu Rati this draft. When you look at defensemen of his stature, I mean, who knows? Look at Lane Hudson right now, for example. He was about that size when he was drafted. He's now 6 feet tall and thriving right now in the NCAA. You look at a guy like Quinn Hughes, he was very small when he was drafted, and look at him, he's thriving right now for the Canucks. So it's a very, very high risk, high reward. He's the most polarizing player for me in this draft. We'll have to see where he goes. I mean, I'm still a believer in Kivaharu. I'm just not sure if he's really first round quality right now until he gets back. He's had a lot of injury problems, as you said. So
Yeah. I mean, great hockey sense offensively. It combines his IQ with that skill and elusiveness that Nick talked about. He's got NHL power play one, like written all over him. He's a guy you can stick on that power play one. He's elusive. He's like Nick mentioned with Quinn Hughes and Hudson. Like that's who he is, right? But he's on the smaller side. He's not really filled out, and there are some consistency questions, especially with his development being impacted by injuries. Um, if we're gonna be able to see him really blossom into that offensive dynamo, I still have him as a later first round talent, but he's the guy that's gonna have to find his game and consistency.
yeah, 100%. I guess I can talk about Celine Wallenius because I'm the one that has him ranked. The thing with Celine Wallenius is there isn't really a defenseman that's producing at the same rate as him in that league. Swedish Junior 20 League, so basically the junior league in Sweden there.
Yeah.
Already at a point per game pace, very mobile. There's a player that he reminds me of from last year's draft, but I can't think of the name. Very mobile, very good 2AD man. Really good vision as well. I mean, he's got the 20 assists there as well. I think by the time it's all said and done, this is a very productive defenseman. I think he'll take a little bit to sort of fill out and grow into a consistent NHL player, but the intangibles are there for sure with him, and I see that when I watch him play. Just a very, like I said, very mobile defenseman there. So
It's not ASP you're thinking of, right? Different guy?
possibly, I don't remember. There's a Swedish guy in there.
All right, let us know if you think of him later on.
All right. Now 18, 19, and 20.
Theo Lindstrom, that's who I'm thinking of. Sorry.
Oh, that's who it is. Yes, I was high on him
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Number 18, Henry Muse. Nick, this is your guy.
Yeah, this is my guy. I'm surprised more people haven't mentioned his name. And when you think of puck moving defenseman, he's one of the premier guys. His skating is already at an elite level. He is slick. He's explosive. Finds areas very quickly. And he's playing on an Ottawa team that's really good as well. But I think even when you go back to last year, I think he put up like 34 points in 50-ish games or so. So he's a guy that's always been able to produce. And the size is there as well already at 6 feet. So I think in terms of, I mean, he played two a game really well as well. He's kind of like a poor man's Brent Clark out there in my eyes. Just really talented, really skilled, really good offensively there as well. And he has been since last season. So just kind of carrying forward. And consistency is one of those things you want to see, especially in a league like the OHL. You kind of want to see players consistently growing and consistently putting up the same points. And Muse is a very safe player in that aspect. So I like him a lot. I think he'll be one of the premier offensive defensemen to come out of this draft.
Yeah, I mean, I like him a lot too. Honestly, he's only 24th for me because I funneled a lot of the forwards. Because you'll notice that in my top 16, I had a lot of defensemen going, and I think finding quality forwards is going to be a little bit more difficult this year than finding a really good defenseman like Henry Muse. And so he's a guy that's fallen a little bit for me because I think there's going to be a lot of teams in those lower 20s that are thinking, hey, we can take a forward here, and then we can come back and get a defenseman that we really like in the second round. But Nick's hit on everything. He is a really good player and definitely a first round talent.
Yeah, I've definitely really to add either. Next, 9 teams. We got Trevor Connolly, another Nick pick.
Yeah, he's really skilled, man. I think he almost made the U18 team as well. I think he should have been on that team. In terms of his skill sets, his ability to put up points, his playmaking ability, his vision. Um, I think he kind of reminds me a little bit of a guy like Gabe Perreault from last year. In terms of maybe the production, not as much, but in terms of his just overall skill set and his skating ability, he's definitely up there with some of the best in that league. So I think he's more of a safer pick. I think he's going to go to college for maybe a couple years, a few years, and he probably thrive there. He's a really good player, but like I said, could have been on that U18 team. I still think he should have been, but it is what it is. I mean, in hindsight, he's playing really well for Tri-City right now. So, yeah, he's one of my guys. I like him a lot.
Yeah, nothing to add. He's another one of those forwards that I like, but I just haven't watched a whole lot of, and his numbers look really good. So admittedly, I'm gonna trust Nick with this one. He's the guy who brought us our Easton Cowan pick last year, and so yeah, more often than not, when Nick tells me there's a forward that he likes, I'm gonna believe him.
Carson Rakoff as well. I don't want to swipe my shoulder too much, but
Hey, I'm just gonna say I had Carson Rakoff as a first too. I was so happy when you took him at Carolina because I was like, I don't want to have to be the one to take him. I love my Kitchener guys. Yeah, so Rakoff and Brustevich are my guys.
And I don't know who this guy is, so I have no thoughts.
Hemming I had in the top 10 at the start of the year. Really good two-way guy. Playing in the men's league, obviously, there as well. His shot's really good. He's put up 5 goals, which doesn't seem like a lot, but I mean, when you compare that to his assists and everything else, he's always produced points in the Finnish junior leagues as well. Just another one of those consistent players that can really grow, I think, and a really good two-way player. Very good defensively, very good offensively as well there. So good size as well. 6'2", almost 200 pounds there. So he's just going to get bigger. And just one of those safer picks, I think, in my eyes.
Yeah, he's another guy that
podcast and say Ryan was shit talking Marchand before the podcast, and now he has a hat trick tonight.
Oh well, I started him in fantasy, so I couldn't.
I hope. Shit. I hope you left him on the bench.
No, because I only had 3 people starting this tonight because no games.
There you go. You reverse jinxed him.
Well, you know what? I hope he scores a lot of goals and Boston loses a lot of games. That's all I gotta say. I have Pasta too, so as long as those two do well and then Boston does trash as a team, I'm okay.
You don't care, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I think Hemming is another guy that I'm gonna have a huge eye on during the World Juniors. I think he's gonna play a very big role on a weaker than usual Finnish team. I think he's gonna feature a lot on the power play with his shot. And we're going to see him on the PK too. And so I think a lot of how he does at that tournament is going to impact how a lot of mock drafters like us have him going. Because, you're not his ice time and his play in his home league is not aspiring, but he's got all the traits. He's got the size. He's got the defensive IQ. And I think he's going to be a good player. That's why I have him 20th.
All right, so this is our final draft boards. If everyone just wants to take a quick look at it, this is definitely going to change in the next few months. I wonder how much it will change. I'm excited to see what guys move up, what guys move down, if there's any new names that we haven't mentioned yet that maybe get on the board. It's going to be interesting to see. And here's some extra guys that might get on the board. We're not going to go into these guys in depth, but
definitely not.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts, guys?
Thank you guys for watching the video. If you're still here up to this point, keep on the lookout for Mock Draft 2.0 in probably another month or 2 months. It'll be really interesting to see how the prospects develop, and who goes up and down. I really like Sasha Boisvert. I don't know how to say his name either.
Boisvert.
Boisvert, my fault. Boisvert. My fault. My recordings don't have audio, so I just
Yeah.
I just circle the number and I watch. But great player. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. And here's to another year of the Tundra Cast.